Overall, I would say value systems have changed. They just have. If you're some gazillionaire, in most cases, the gazillionaires are usually people that they didn't really start at the real bottom. They didn't. That, like in the vast majority of cases, they did not start off in like the projects on the south side of whatever town, right? With barely any food. Most of them did not start off that way. There's always this illusion of like, the tech bro who started off with nothing. Like, oh, okay, yeah. What did your dad do for a living? Well, he was an orthopedic surgeon. Okay, what did your mom do? Well, she worked for a large tax attorney firm. It's things like that. It's like, okay, so you really didn't really start off at the bottom per se, did you? You already started off. You have nothing in common with people who are starting off with nothing, because there's a lot of people out there that fit that category that start off with nothing, and for them it's like, okay, they have to go out and do a bunch of work. No, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm okay with that too. You start off, go to work, but the thing is that if you're just going to keep stealing their money back through inflation, and some of these people don't even understand how inflation works, but inflation is one of these things that destroys the value of all your labor. So your labor is what's being wiped out on this, because when you're being paid, well, then you're getting a bunch of your money pulled back in terms of spending power through inflation. Now, if that couldn't happen, then there would be a whole different crop of rich people. In fact, most of these gazillionaires wouldn't even exist. You'd never know who Bezos was. The odds don't favor it. Same thing with a bunch of these guys. Like you'd really, they might be wealthy merchants, in like, a big fish in a small pond kind of thing, but you wouldn't see this ridiculousness, this absurdity of, another couple $100 billion kind of thing. It's like, what are you going to do with it? Like, there's no, you know what I mean? You wouldn't see that kind of thing. So the value systems have changed. And when you get people to a certain point where they're no longer in touch, there's a movie that was Francis Ford Coppola did called Megalopolis. The movie itself, I haven't made up my mind on, because it's all over the place. It wants to be a really good movie, and all of the elements are there. I don't know that he pulled it off personally, but there's a lot of high concepts in there, and one of them that's very apparent is that the super elites that exist, they have nothing in they see basically everybody else is just, like feeder cattle kind of thing. Like, I mean, they feed everybody. It's like, you know what I mean? Like that's really kind of how it is. And this changed briefly. We only saw this, at least in recorded recent history, with between like 1800 and 1835 or so in the US. And that was when everybody was equally armed and equally just as willing to use the V word at the drop of a hat. Just rock and roll instantly. That's how you achieve equality. I know that there's a bunch of people pushing this equity idea. Don't do equity yet. You need to get equality first. And you have to get that first. And the only way you get equality is when everybody is equally armed. All right, we've heard the statement that it's like, God created man, and then Samuel Colt made them equal, right? Well, okay, it isn't just Colt. I mean, it's like you need to be able to, like, that's why none of these laws ever go away. It's why I talk about this stuff periodically. You hear me talk about the Second Amendment periodically. It's because, like, that is the problem. The so-called common sense, control thing. That was the Second Amendment. That was the common sense. Not this. What you have right now is a disaster, because now you have people that can be ripped off, and then they're powerless to do anything about it. They don't have the ability or the hardware to go and say, okay, that's it. I'm going to be the one-man show. I'm going to be, I'm going to go do the Rambo thing, so to speak. Because with technology, lots of guys could. Even people who aren't very well trained. I mean, you need to train, of course, but I mean, like, even people who aren't very well trained can do an enormous amount of damage with the right kind of technology at their fingertips. All of that technology has been made illegal. So their value system doesn't have to do that. See, back in the day, you kind of had to do that. If you were going to tell people a story, for example, it would be like, hey, come work for my company, and I'm going to pay you X amount of money. Okay, great. Is there a future of this company? Oh, yeah, you're going to work hard, you'll get ahead, etc. Real vague definitions and so on. And if you screwed somebody over, it may be the last time you screw somebody over back in the day. Well, nowadays you can screw people over all the time and you can get away with it. And because they get away with it, well, then that just, it feeds on itself. You understand? It feeds on the idea that you keep getting away with it. No one it's like, I pointed this out a long time ago with kids, like the so-called inner city kids, right? No one goes from zero to drive-by. You don't just be, some kid in the city, who's like, doing whatever in the front yard, running through the sprinkler, and then decide, okay, I'm gonna go do drive-bys now. It doesn't work like that. You build up to that. Yeah, that's no different with the gazillionaire people. You build up to the point where you just have complete contempt and disconnection from the rest of humanity. In fact, you start to see yourself as a different species than all of them. All right? I mean, so, that's really kind of how it is. This is that Morlock and Eloy kind of thing that H.G. Wells wrote about. This is, right? I mean, this is all throughout fiction. Like, there's tons of fiction books on this. That cover this very topic. And many of them don't bother to really think that stuff through and say, okay, hold on just a second here. Is there something that we can maybe do to fix some of this? There's really no incentive to it, especially when they get 3 and 4 generations deep. You breed that into somebody 3 to 4 generations. No, they're not going to care at all about. That's why 3rd and 4th generation trust fund kids, I've said this for a long time, 3rd and 4th generation trust fund kids are no different than 3rd and 4th generation welfare kids. It's the same mentality. The checkbooks are different, the cars are different, the lifestyle's different, but the mentality is the exact same. There's no longer a correlation between the idea of production and cooperation and voluntary existence. There's no longer that correlation. It doesn't exist anymore in their mind. They're too disconnected. And they have to be reminded of their humanity. That's as far as I can take that statement, but they have to be reminded of that periodically. That's why there was supposed to be there wasn't supposed to ever be a standing army in the U.S. Army people don't like it when you point that out. Neither do Air Force people, but it's the truth. It's not even supposed to exist. They have to keep renewing it all the time because there was never supposed to be a standing army. The founders didn't want that because they knew what that led to. It led to stuff like this. It's where all this stuff goes. So, because then you get people just addicted to the idea of government spending. And the last, 3-4 weeks, I've been talking about this a lot. Like, government spending. That's what they're all addicted to. And if your whole business model, this is another problem. If your whole business model is based upon government spending, you do whatever the government tells you to do. Which means that if you're not allowed to let any of that trickle down, well, yeah. Because remember, if it trickles down, poor people are going to start paying off debt. And you cannot have that. In a debt-based currency like the US dollar, which is based on debt, it wouldn't exist without debt. It would not exist without debt. That means that poor people would pay off debt. If they pay off debt, that makes their currency worthless. Makes the dollar worth less and less and less the more debt people pay off on the world scale, because then other countries, creditor countries, say, it's why, for example, the bonds, that are coming due, there's nobody wants to really buy them. Yeah, because other countries are saying there's no way for any of your plebs to pay to eat. Like, they're not even going to make the payments on this. There's no way. Your population can't even afford this anymore. You've bankrupted your entire population of people, and you've propped up a handful of fake gazillionaires that really don't have anything except, again, on paper. It's all on paper. None of it's really real. It's always a projected idea of, if you could liquidate it, if you could find a buyer, and then they had cash. And of course, there aren't any buyers that have that much cash. So, right, that's checkmate. So, but I hope that kind of answers your question in the broad sense. But yeah, the value systems have changed. That's what it is. And it's because these people weren't reminded that they were supposed to have values.